Good evening. My name is Robert Shackford, and I'm here to give my informative speech on veteran suicide and mental illness within the military community. So, I would like to start off by saying that mental illness and suicide has been a big subject pushed by the United States, and we are starting to really try to find ways to actually solve this problem, and that's a good thing. However, there's one group that we have not necessarily been ignoring, but not really brought into the limelight, even though I would like to argue that they have suffered the most from this issue. And that is veterans and active duty service members. They arguably suffer the most from mental illnesses and the most from suicide. So, why should you care? I would like to state and even gamble that you guys have had some level of contact, some level of positive contact with an active duty service member or possibly a veteran, whether they be in your family, whether they went to school with you, or even some of them that may go to school with you. Some of them may be in your classes. Some of them may have even be your professors. So now that I kind of established this connection with you guys, I want you to understand why I am even giving this. Well, for me, I'm part of Navy ROTC. Veterans are my constituent group in a sense. They're the ones I go to so that I can reassure that no matter when they leave, how they leave, or why they have to leave, that they can feel comfortable knowing that I will be the one taking up their reign whenever they leave. That they will feel comfortable in my leadership with their men and women in service. So, to get started, I would like to highlight three main points that I want to get through with this speech. The first point is I would like to highlight the treatment that they receive while in active duty. Second is the treatment that they receive while out of the military, while they get out. And third, I would like to highlight the actual raw statistics and numbers of how many of them are suffering from mental illness or even committing suicide. So, to start off, what kind of life do they live while in active duty? Most active duty service members will stand long days, from 10 to maybe even 14-hour work days. That's not all though. After that, they may stand additional duties called watches so that they can secure whatever tasks need to be done for that day so that everybody can stay safe, whether on a ship or whether in the battalion. Everybody will stay safe with these watches. So that encompasses most of their day. Now, they can go back to their rooms and sleep, right? I would argue that they actually get some of the worst treatment in that part. You see, the barracks, as everybody may commonly know, are disgusting, foul, and absolutely subpar. Most barracks in the military are actually infested with mold. In an article written by military.com, they asked a Army service member what it was like living in barracks. He stated that his barracks were in fact painted with mold, and all that he was told to do by his upper chain of command, his upper enlisted, and his officers were to put a work order in. Yet those work orders rarely ever see to get resolved or see any results, leaving them with having to kind of solve this issue by themselves with very poor levels of equipment and poor levels of work even able to be done by themselves. So, you kind of get that sense now as to what kind of a crappy life they live inside the service. So, what is it like when they get out? It's got to be better, right? You would presume that. However, when they get out, I would like to even argue that they lose that sense of family that they had while in service. They lose a lot of their friends because every single one is getting out at a different time and they're leaving to very different places. So they're losing that sense of family that they had. Now, when they go to the place that they're supposed to go to, the Department of Veterans Affairs, they're actually getting some pretty poor treatment. In an audit done by the private sector and reviewed by USA Today, USA Today stated that the Inspector General Office for the Department of Veterans Affairs cited that from May 15 to May 1st of 2021, nearly 7.3 appointments were canceled. This roughly amassed to around 30,000 to 300,000 appointments, depending on the year and time. A third of which of those appointments actually had no inclination of follow-up or tracking at the time of review. However, the sad part is that most of these appointments were actually for the cases of mental illness, such as depression, imposter syndrome, or even survivor syndrome. So now they're left alone, seriously alone. They got no backup, they have nobody to go to, and nobody to relate to, and no way to get help, at least in a timely manner. So what does that lead them to? Sadly, it leads them to the result of suicide. An article published by USO.org, a news outlet concerning active duty service, they say that in 2021, research found that a little over 300,000 active duty personnel and veterans who served in the military after 9/11 died from suicide. That is in comparison to a little over 7,000 service members that were actually killed in action during those same 20 years. That is saying that military suicide rate are roughly around 4 times higher than the actual deaths that were occurred during military operations. Lastly, in an article released by the Department of Veterans Affairs in 2019, 52.3% of veterans were actually found to have higher chances of committing suicide and even actually committing suicide. That is in comparison to their counterparts in non-active duty or just regular old Americans. These compare white people to white people, ethnicity to ethnicity, religious background to religious background, peer to peer. From one service member to a normal American, they were found to have 50% more likely chances to even commit suicide or have been found to have actually committed suicide. And then finally, in a separate article released by the Department of Veterans Affairs, it stated that the National Institute of Drug Abuse reports that between 37 to 50% of veterans returning from Afghanistan and Iraq have been diagnosed with mental disorders and substance use disorders, and that 63% of those diagnosed with substance use disorders also met the criteria for post-traumatic stress disorder. Some of these actually went unchecked and will in fact lead to those high rates of suicide that we discussed. So, in summary, United States service members have been treated poorly for the last few decades. They have had terrible housing with terrible quality of living with very little oversight and check on that. Not only that, whenever they get out of the service, they were actually given poor treatment, very little treatment, and in some cases, no treatment at all for their mental and physical issues, leading them to believe that they were lone, stranded, and without any cause for help. A majority of them actually have committed suicide right under our very noses, and we have done nothing. However, I would like to kind of just tie this back to front real quick. To those people that you do know, that have gone to school with you, go to school with you, or have in your family that are service members or are veterans, the least that you can do, and at the same time, the most that you can do to help them is just to talk. They don't need exactly someone that can 100% and understand them. Most of the time, they want someone that hears them. So please, whatever you do, just go and talk to them. Sit down, have a coffee, and please, please tell them that you care and that you will do your best to get them help if they ask. Thank you. Have a good evening.